News. We took a look at the regulations and the other safety protocols that have to do with recreation centers. But then let's look at the broader challenges and the prospects in that particular sector itself. We have with us Sam Orovwuje, who is the Director Policy Research and Development for Femi Walsh Limited, owners of Souq News and Walsh Radio. Good morning, Sam, for joining us here.
Ayo, my pleasure to be here. I'm blessing.
Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
I know you are widely traveled, and yes, you've seen quite a lot of places in your experience in life so far, and you have actually, been to a lot of recreation centers. And beyond being a consumer of recreation services, I know you do have extensive knowledge about, some of the issues we're talking about here, the challenges of the recreation business. Why is it? Because there are countries in the world where, a sizable chunk of their GDP comes from, let's call it tourism, because recreation will be part of that, really. But then we don't seem to have, to be making so much use of that, taking that advantage here in our country. Talking about the possibilities, the potentials of these recreation centers as revenue drivers for the country. Let's have an opener, a general opener. What is the general, maybe the number one challenge that we have in scaling up the revenue drive from recreation centers in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you very much indeed. First, let's see it from a policy perspective. The Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation has a mandate to develop that sector. Therefore, we must make a distinction between international tourism, domestic tourism, medical tourism, education tourism, and all that. And there's a vision that was crafted some years back called Vision 2025. That's from the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation. This agenda was supposed to pull up investment in the domestic tourism industry. So the prospects are there, the challenges are there, but as we progress, we're able to speak to the specific issues within that industry.
All right, let's look at the competition in industry of recreational business. We will have different kinds of recreational business springing up these days, and it's even expanding to different areas. Before now, people used to know recreational business as maybe you go to an amusement park or you go to maybe the cinema, but we now have different kinds. We have the gym, which is one way that people even recreate, trying to keep fit and all of that. Like I said, other business springing up. So in keeping with the dynamics that's keep happening with the recreation business, what are some of the challenges?
All right, I think within the tourism industry, I like to use a generic word. Recreation is part of those businesses. One of the major challenges is security, service delivery, the service culture, particularly from those who operate in those businesses, need to be upscaled in order to be able to sustain that sector. Number two, the government needs to have a deliberate policy that promotes tourism beyond what the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation is doing. Then investors in those sectors too must up their game in terms of the service delivery they offer. Therefore, service, in my view, is a major driver and enabler for recreation or tourism business. Therefore, a massive investment must be made in terms of the service so that when potential tourists or those who use those centers go to those places, they are able to get value for their money and their time.
Okay, now, let's look at the seasonality of the service being rendered. We do know that when we have festive seasons, there is, an influx of people into recreation centers. But then when the festivities are over, there seems to be a lull in the market, so to speak. And this doesn't, support the smooth running of business, because if your income or if your revenue is seasonal, you really can't plan long term. What can, owners of these facilities, do, or maybe at the policy level, what can we do to ensure that we have a constant, because Dubai has a constant flow of tourists every year. What are they doing right that maybe other parts of the world maybe in Africa in particular, can take a look at to ensure that we take care of this seasonality of festivities, whether there are festivals or not. People who run these centers can still make meaningful revenue. What should we do that we're not doing it?
All right, thank you very much. I think earlier in this conversation, I talked about security, but what is uppermost in that sector is the way we offer service. Therefore, the government must have a deliberate policy that drives service delivery in that sector. Number two, even though some of those businesses within the tourist sector are seasonal, but there's always something in season that address investment that will sustain people coming to take advantage of those. So, for example, just last month, you have the Orovwuje Festival that ran over for 2 weeks, and you have a lot of millions of people coming from the Caribbean. There are other festivals towards the end of the year. You just have what they call the Isheshe Festival. I hope I pronounced that very. Isheshe Festival. Those ones equally attracted a lot of followers in some of the states in the southwest. So the point is that once the security reforms are offbeat, a lot of investment, service delivery is done, then we'll be able to sustain the prospect. But you must understand that there's a distinction between international tourism and domestic tourism. So at the domestic front, we must improve on hotel services and all the ancillary services that support that industry. Then for us to get international tourists, we need to improve on those various tourist destinations that are very attractive. You have the Kogisi, you have other festivals around the country that can sustain that sector.
What are some of the new trends that have influenced the recreational activities that businesses offer?
All right, if you want to talk about cinema, that's part of it. You talked about gym earlier, so people are taking those kind of relaxation mode to be able to create value and revitalize themselves to keep up with what you call work-life balance. So those are some of the new trends, and those trends are in high demand. People subscribe to those gyms for recreation purposes. So we pray and hope that more investment will come into that sector to be able to drive domestic tourism.
Okay, let's look at the need for balance between maximizing enjoyment for visitors to a tourist center or a recreation facilities and ensuring that we have sustainable, practices there. Oftentimes, when people visit a particular center, they leave, litters everywhere. How should, tourist center owners, conduct themselves in such a way that while people are enjoying, because that's what they came to pay for, they still, inculcate sustainable habits? How do we set this, maybe at the policy level or maybe at the organizational level, so that you are going there to enjoy without destroying the environment for us?
Essentially, that speaks to customer service that I mentioned earlier. So a component of customer service is a customer service standard. So for the operators in the industry, they need to up the game in terms of their customer service standard to keep those places clean, hygienic, so that people can always come back to those environments. So it has to do with the service level by the operator. So on the part of government, the service standard, particularly from the Nigerian Tourism Development Corporation, they need to improve on the service standard for those who operate within the domestic tourism sector, so that people can visit those places and be able to sustain those places over a period of time.
Okay, so in what way can rising cost of equipment, the facility, maintenance of the facility itself, staff training impact the profitability of a recreational business? And is there a way to go about that?
Once you invest in that sector, it's a tourist sector. So one of the major drivers for that sector are the equipment and the service that we spoke to earlier. So those who have investment in those areas must find a way to sustain the service delivery so that they can have return on their investment, to sustain the profitability which they intend to have in those businesses. So service is critical to the sustainability of that sector.
Okay, you have spoken extensively about service delivery, which is key to the growth of that particular sector. Yes, you mentioned customer service or customer experience, but we do know that there are changing consumer preferences these days. When people went to the parks in the past, there were things they probably wanted to see, but today it has been said that the tastes and the preferences have changed. Could you just speak to some of these changes that people now expect to see when they go to recreation centers, maybe that was not there before?
No, I think that, again, to a very large extent, is subjective. It depends on the kind of recreation center that
okay, let me give you
an
instance now. There is the place of experiential recreation. Now, people want to experience things. Before now, people just went there for sightseeing. Now there is the infusion of technology now that you can how things in real times when you wear this your artificial goggle and so on and so forth. So I'm speaking to that. How have changes in consumer expectations impacted the recreation business for
okay. Specifically, what you're talking about impact of technology on that sector. So what it is, because of the changing dynamics in that sector, investors must equally react to consumer preferences, and you just talk about customer experience. So what kind of experiential value do people get when they come to your recreation center? So you must constantly invest, driven by technology and consumer preferences, to be able to stay on top of the curve or above, or to meet customer expectation and equally exceed those expectations, so that at the end of the day, you can get value and a better return on your investment. So technology is a major driver in terms of customer experience.
All right, in terms of the demand for businesses that offer recreational activities, what actually influenced the demand? Is it the culture, which is the way of life of the people, or the economic situation in that environment?
I think both. In this part of the world, in terms of the way we patronize the recreation center is a bit lower. So that's part of culture. But again, people feel that for you to spend money to go and relax, in some cases, is a waste of time. So, but I think we need more education in that area, that you need to energize yourself from time to time, what the Japanese call the Kaizen effect, to be able to regenerate, so that you are able to add value to whatever you are doing. So it's important that we educate people that you need to recreate from time to time. So the cultural ambition that stop those kind of things must be addressed. Then the cost must equally be looked at. But there must be a balance between the two elements that we just talked about.
Okay, do you think we are doing enough to attract investment into the recreation subsector, let me call it that way? Of course, when we had Wale Adegoke, who spoke about some centers, and you mentioned the Kogosi, Wall Spring, and so on and so forth, which used to be specific centers for recreation, the Obudukatu Ranch, and so on and so forth. At the national level, are we making enough efforts now to attract more investors to come and develop those recreation centers within the tourism sector as a whole? Or if we're not, what should we be doing to ensure that we don't lose the values that those places have to offer us as a country?
I think for those the sector that had international appeal, the Kogisi that I mentioned earlier is other new international management, and a lot of it has been rebranded, and a lot of international visitors are coming. So what is the key for me is, to what extent can we sustain a customer service culture that enhance attraction to those places? So there's investment, but for local investors, they must up their game, like I mentioned earlier, in terms of service delivery. So once the service are okay, people will be attracted to those centers. So the government on their part must equally see how the ease of doing business in those sectors are encouraged, so that you have more international investors and local investors coming to that sector, so that we can drive a revenue stream that will improve on our GDP in the long run.
There are diverse markets within the recreation industry. Now, are there certain aspects of that market that are yet to be explored in Nigeria?
I think maybe if you talk about the volume of investment, yes, but there's hardly any sector within that tourist practice in Nigeria that has not been invested into. But what I can speak to is that we need to provide adequate service delivery so that more people will be interested to invest in that industry. So you can drive in traffic, international traffic, then domestic traffic to sustain the businesses in those sectors. But hardly any sector that has not been invested into in that area. Maybe the volume and the patronage, that may be something that we can speak to at another time.
Okay, now, improvements take place when there are enough constructive feedbacks to the organizers or the owners of these recreation centers. In your experience so far, having been to several parts of the world, now localize it to Nigeria now as a case study, do you think there are enough feedback gates for visitors to all these centers to lodge complaints that would eventually lead to operational rejigging that you've been speaking to? Do you have enough feedback gates, or it's just we take what comes to us?
I think some of those businesses have a feedback mechanism that should address customer complaint. But the challenge here is that we don't really have a service culture as a people. So what we need to improve on is to find a way to drive a service culture. That's what we call service leadership culture that deals with service standard, customer experiences, or to be able to train the operators and those who are service provider within the sector. We may not be able to get the desired result in terms of customer feedback mechanism. Therefore, we need to improve on the way we respond to customer complaint. And as they say in customer service, the customer that complains is your best customer. The quiet customer that does not complain is most dangerous. Therefore, those complaints must be treated in a way that it adds value to the customer. And those service providers must equally reach out to those feedbacks by responding in terms of reaching the various customers through various touch points.
We're in the digital age, so what is the role of technology in ensuring quality service delivery? Okay,
technology we aid in terms of you can purchase your tickets online. You can have technology as effect in some of those recreation centers. So technology is an enabler, is a facilitator for that industry. So technology will continue to play a major role in driving that business. So for people to stay in that business, you need to invest in technology, you need to invest in service delivery to sustain their play in that industry.
All right, we've spoken so well about service delivery. If we still have a lot of people who are thinking of setting up businesses in that particular sector, the recreation subsector, as I would like to call it. What would be beyond service delivery? If you were in a position to advise would-be investors, what would you ask them to take care of? You mentioned security earlier, you mentioned service delivery. What other things do you think they should take care of? Or do you think once these two are taken care of, then they are good to go?
All right, I think the investment must be on human capital, because human capital is the driver of service and all the deliverable that you expect to make your customer to be happy. Therefore, investment in the right personnel with a service orientation and a service culture will help to drive that business.
All right, now let's look at another aspect, which is the engagement with a local engagement, which some recreational businesses have been able to do through events to further boost loyalty to the business. Because you find that a business starts up within maybe the first year or some months, and it's a boom because a lot of other people who go to patronize other recreational activities are drawn there. But over time, they are able to retain these people. So what kind of community engagement should those in recreational industry engage in to encourage loyalty?
All right, the ambience is number one. The service delivery, we cannot avoid talking about service delivery because it's the heart of that industry. So what can make those business stay on a sustainable manner is the kind of service you have, the kind of personnel that you recruit into that sector, and the training and retraining of the personnel will help them to stay in business. So local engagement in terms of investment in human capital, service delivery is important. Investment even in the local community where you train what you call tourist guide and those who provide ancillary service will help in that direction.
Okay, one of those, maybe not services, one of those things that, you know, investors in this subsector can do to promote local participation is giving back to the society, ensuring that they contribute positively to the growth of that particular locale where they are operating from. But experiences in the past show that they seem to operate in silos. It's always a gated facility in the first place for security reasons and what have you. Then the people in the neighborhood might not be able to really, you know, access that place. Shouldn't there be some kind of consideration for the locales that you have there because you are thriving in their environment?
I think the concept of corporate social responsibility, CSR, has always been a part of a business model. Sometimes even when you don't have a direct CSR project within the community, some of the locals are employed in those businesses, and I can see that as a form of corporate social responsibility. Therefore, beyond maintaining a clean environment, depending on the business model of those service providers, then social responsibility can come in form of giving employment to the people in that environment, but it can go beyond that by providing other social amenities, water, maybe building a community service center for the immediate community. We help to energize those businesses where they play.
Thank you very much, Sam Orovwuje, who is Director, Research Policy and Development, Femi Wash Limited, owners of Souq News and Wash Radio, for talking to us today about the challenges and prospects of the recreation business. So if you are an owner of any recreational business, you've gotten some tips today on how to navigate the challenges. And if you are looking forward to investing in recreation business, you've seen the prospect of the business, you now know what to do. Thank you again for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. Bless you.